The following is a fan-based discussion. All properties discussed are property of Toei Inc., Bandai, Hasbro, and Subaru Productions. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Tokutalk. Today, Marcus and Jacob here, we are going to discuss cinematography.
Yes.
Across Toku.
Yes. I'm going to mostly defer to you here.
Hey, thanks. No, but it's fine. Well, cinematography is just, it's the way things look on camera, the way things are lensed, the way things are shot, how things are shot.
Yes. Which,
watching Kamen Rider Geats now for our review, and having recently watched shows like Denziman and Kikaider and the Kikaider reboot and many other things, Shin Kamen Rider and Shin Ultraman we watched this year, first couple episodes of Blazer, it's very easy to see how much things have changed in it over the years.
Yes.
Beginning with a lot of Toku in the 70s and 80s, a lot of it, you notice, because I love when we can get away with, because it's like, plant the camera here, do a couple things, maybe we'll zoom around, maybe we'll pan around, do a couple things, but it's mostly just like, plant the camera here, we do a thing, plant the camera over here, do a thing. It's not the most exciting.
No, and I sort of want to bring up Kamen Rider 71 here,
Go ahead.
Where it's just like, a lot of it, especially with the way that the finishers are done, they'll do like the punch at the camera.
Mm-hmm.
It's you get more reaction shots back then, for especially a lot of the finishers and stuff, where they'll like be kicked, but you'll end up seeing the reaction of the kick, and like they'll get thrown off a cliff, and then boom. You don't end up getting to see, like, at least not all the time, you don't get to see impact.
Because we saw this a lot. I mean, like Go Ranger especially is like they'll get hit by the ball, and then they'll just kind of like stumble away a few feet, and then and then they blow up, and it's not the most exciting thing to watch.
No.
Compare that to nowadays. Compare that to, say, what we just watched with Shin Kamen Rider, where we have you feel and see every impact when the editing allowed for it. That's a whole nother conversation. But people get kicked in that movie, and like you do see and feel them get flung across in like a wide panning shot, then get thrown through like 50 concrete dividers before dissolving into foam, and like you feel the impact, you see everything.
They get Little Mermaided.
The original,
yes, the original,
where she turned into sea foam at the end. I just did that reference, but I think because I've been keen to point out in some of my reviews, I think it was in Metalder. There was a moment where we followed the villain was like shooting at civilians, and we followed his arm in a tracking shot as he was firing at them.
It's such an interesting way to see the influence of technology as things have gone along, especially nowadays with all the CGI and different filming things. Like you said, the one shot in Metalder happened in the 80s, but then you end up having something like Cure Major, where they had the Ultraman, one of the Ultraman action directors come in and had all the mechs fighting in the background and red and yellow fighting in the foreground, which is still one of the coolest shots.
It is one of the coolest shots, I think, in Sentai history.
It's so cool. Do more.
We are seeing more and more people taking advantage of the space that they have with the technology they have. It is less about like, we have to capture this thing on here, so we'll put it here, capture this thing here, so we put it here. The way they edit around certain tricks, the way like, Kikaider, for example, would do like somersaults with the bad guy like in his, like, holding onto his arms, and it would just be like, okay, flip here, cut, flip here, cut, flip here, cut.
It wasn't even always that. Sometimes you just spin the camera.
Or just spin the camera. I mean, you do what you can with the technology you have, with what's available to you, which is fine. But I think you look at something like, what was the example I was going to use? I mean, like if you go back to Cure Major, we go back to the Keep Away episode, or we go back to the battle in the finale,
or the Zenkaiger episode where they also did the Keep Away.
Yeah, and the way like if we can just stay on action for a moment, the way the camera follows the action, the way the camera is giving you different angles. I mean, Geats that I'm watching now, there was a scene in Geats that I watched last night where it was like a drone shot, and like he jumped over the drone, and the drone like flew up into the air in the same shot, and then came back down to ground level. and gave you a good look at the action.
The advent of drones, especially, really, I think the first thing they really used in Toku that I really remember was Zyuohger. In like episode 1, where you followed Eagle's perspective,
where you follow the Eagle perspective as he's flying, and we see like the view of the battlefield.
Yeah, which
we're like in a river,
which is very
like
cool.
On a stream and something, and like very everyone's fighting, and like we're seeing different views.
Zyuohger might not be the best show, but damn it, did it have some very cool shots because of Eagle.
And also, it was Q Ranger as well.
Yeah,
I think did this very well. Q Ranger was before,
right before.
Because I think Q Ranger
that was 41. So Zyuohger was 40.
Okay. So yeah, after with Q Ranger, they evolved that a little more. And there's, like early on in the episode, there was a scene where the wolf, I don't remember his name. Garo. Where he like leaps up to like fight some guys like on a high, like who are like higher up, and the camera is like following him as he jumps, and then like we're like planted down as he continues to fight there, and that's really cool.
Yeah.
And then you look at the movie side of things, we have Shin Ultraman recently did this incredibly well, giving us great senses of scale. Ultraman, the best of it really does this.
Yeah, he gave us Ultra Spin.
Ultra Spin, and also just like giving you a sense of it, making its big things feel big, which on a television screen with a television budget, not easy to do.
One thing I do want to bring up, because it's something that I noticed
but Ultraman does it well.
Every single time that this is something really specific to Sentai.
Mm-hmm.
It's the foreground background shots, where it's like you have the action taking place over here. Like say you have Momo Ranger fighting in the background, you have Aqua Ranger fighting up here. Like the action's taking place at the same time. The fact that they do that pretty much every single decade, at least once a show, you can see the advent of it and how it's really leveled up. Another one that really comes to mind is Bioman. I love Bioman. It's very like, this is Sentai, but I love Bioman. But they had so many shots of them like fighting on dams, and like they had Blue fighting all the way up there, and then the camera pans out and you see a sword fly in, and it's Pink fighting on the foreground.
Yeah.
And it's just so interesting to see how action direction and technology really end up working together for cinematography the further you go along. And you end up having something like Kamen Ranger, where they have like Red fighting back here, but then he splits into several Reds, and the Reds are fighting in different places. It's just really interesting to see how it works over time. Seeing essentially the same shot, but in different decades with advancing technology.
We go back to Denzi Man.
Yeah.
And we have, there was a scene in Denzi Man where one of them is like fighting in the foreground, and then like in on a zip line. I think it's Denzi Blue, because the trapeze artist comes like swinging in on a zip line, and he's like kicking minions in the head as he's flying over them.
1, where did the zip line come from? 2, we don't care.
No, we don't.
It's just so interesting to see things like that. And especially, you could really talk about this when it comes to like the more ninja-esque shows like Jiraiya and Kamen Ranger and Hurricane Ranger and Ninja, where like they'll end up having like the ninja speed thing happening a lot more. You saw this actually in the first episode of Gokaiger as well, or right there at the beginning of 199, where the Kamen Rangers are like coming in with the Hurricaners and just fighting ninja speed and all the dashes, colored dashes and stuff, and then coming together.
Giving you a good wide shot so you can see everything, and then making sure everyone is color coordinated. Sentai does that, of course, and so we see everyone, we can see who's fighting who, and we have a good sense of what's going on.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where I love it so much. I love the cinematography in Sentai a lot, simply because I just love shots like that, but also just because of the fact that we've watched something from each decade at this point. So we can just see everything.
We can see the evolution of where it's like literally from where it started, because we've seen Go Ranger now to where it is now with King Ojo, which I would like to talk about for a second. There's shots that are very busy. We're starting to see more of scenes with lots of extras. Yeah, scenes with lots of people. Like it could have been they just like sectioned off one small city square and filmed a bunch of people there, but they do a good job of making.
Well, usually now it's just CGI areas because they were filming on that thing they used.
Well, I'm also talking about like the city in episode 2.
Oh yeah,
where you had like a crowd of people for the hacking battle.
Oh yeah.
But like the way they give you a good sense of like how many people by like showing you different angles of the crowd, and we have the Red Ranger with like a little kid on his shoulders who's like, you know, giving her a boost so she could see, which is really cute. And it's like gives you a little sense of like we're introducing him to the world and we're also introducing the audience to the world.
Yeah.
In a pretty cool way. And I would also like to talk about how cinematography has evolved, particularly in recent years, in terms of how it relates to characters. I think in past years, but particularly the Showa era, but also Heisei and some early Reiwa as well, I think there is an emphasis on we have to capture the action.
Yeah.
There's an emphasis on like we have to capture the action, we have to capture the bodies, we have to show you who's there. And I think that in conjunction with the script just left it feeling very workmanlike.
Yeah.
I would say not like bad per se, depends on the show, but it's very like this is what we need to do to get what's in frame. And now, especially now that we've had shows like Zenkaiger, like Dawn Brothers, Geats, King Oger, Blazer as well, as the Reiwa era has gone on, there seems to be more of an emphasis on what can we put in the frame that will tell us about this character.
Yeah.
I'm thinking in particular of the cafe scenes where Sonoy.
Oh yeah.
I forget what their name. What is the name of their race?
Cerebrans.
Cerebrans. Thank you. So with the Cerebrans and Dawn Brothers are in the cafe, and they each have their particular order that they go to, and the way to like cut to their face and then like cut down to what they have, and we'll see them throughout the scene, like, you know, like they'll nurse their drink, they'll take a bite of their parfait, whatnot. The way that they are emphasizing like little character moments.
Yeah,
we want to make this more about you, the actor, and less about the Sentai.
Yeah, and you end up seeing this.
If that makes any sense.
Speaking of Dawn Brothers, it's like one of those things after Sonoy comes back the first time, and you see like Taro's reaction to him over Sonoy's shoulder in some cases, because, you know, the boyfriends. There's so much panic on Taro's face because he does not know what to do in the situation. It's like, oh no, I've been there. But it's just like, it's one of those things where, oh, this is who he's reacting to specifically. You can see over Sonoy's shoulder the panic.
It feels like we are letting... It's like we have better scripts now, I think, that the actors really have something to sink their teeth into.
Yeah.
And we have more emotions, we have more things that we have to capture on film. And as a result, I mean, even in something like Zenkaiger, where you have people in suits, we don't have like a physical face that can emote the way, you know, a normal one does.
It's very much so
it's a lot of body language. It's the body language and the voice acting.
Yeah.
And the way they are able to capture that, the way Yellow, for example, in that show, the way he loves cute things and soft things, the way we see him just get giddy, the way the camera is like framed on him in such a way that like you are capturing all the body language you need to show that like he's so excited that there is a kitten there that he can go pet.
Yeah.
And just little things like that we're seeing more and more of, and I love that.
Something else got brought up recently, and actually somebody else's video, I can't exactly remember, but I remember seeing it recently. They were talking about super speed. And how it's not exactly being done, but he was like very American focused, but he brought up Kabuto and how Kabuto did speed with its cinematography in that. Because it's like, you look at something like The Flash, where it's, let's face it, wasn't really done the best for a lot of that show. But you also end up having something like Kabuto where you see how...
I thought you were talking about the movie.
No. We're talking about the show.
Which I never really watched.
But you don't have something like Kabuto where you really see how the outer world ended up affecting the writers themselves, not just how they're affecting the world because it's like everything else is slowing down. It's like, no, you have Kabuto walking through the rain. You have the slowdown of the roller coaster as it's coming down, and then Kabuto and the monster are fighting against it. Kabuto really enough does things like that better. I wish they did super speed more in a lot of cases. You sort of saw it in the trailer for Gotchard, where he did his rider kick. And it's like, it slowed down, then he was just at the monster. And I'm just like, oh, I really hope that we end up having more scenes like that. We need another super speed rider or something. again soon, just to see how Toei would do it for its action direction and its cinematography, or how they would show super speed. Because I think that honestly, Kabuto is probably one of the best versions of that.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Anything else you would like to add? I feel I've said all I need to.
Mech fights.
Oh yeah, sure. The way those have changed is drastic in the last couple of years.
Drastic in the last couple of decades.
I mean, the way I'm thinking of the Reiwa era in particular, and the way we've seen mech fights evolve in that compared to the way it used to be, where it could have. The only thing that was missing was like two hands on either of them and having them smash together in some of those fights. But the occasional moments where it's like you see the little bits of artistry shine through, like in the first episode of Denzi Man, there's this great shot where I think it's like the kaiju is in the background, Daidenzio is in the foreground, and it kind of like pans around, but there is like little bits of like set dressing that gives you a sense of scale for how big the mech is and how big the kaiju is and how far they are away from each other, and it's like a nice like slow panning shot before the fight actually happens, and it's like, that's great. More of that, please.
Like, especially when, as I said, seeing it over the decades, it's just like, it's usually just been they fight against each other, mech the same finisher, we're done. But then you end up having something like Zenkaijo where they were just like, let's bring in all the comedy to these mech fights. At least the ones before the CGI mech at the end, where it was just like, it's basically just the monster fight.
Let's not be afraid to be silly.
Yeah, it's basically just the monster fight on the ground, but big. And like the sushi episode. It's just, I love the inventiveness of how they're doing a lot of the cinematography nowadays. With it's not just the same mech fight over and over and over again.
To keep things big, you look at what Ultraman's been doing as well. The
laser with the whip.
With the whip, and also with with the last one we watched, there was some great use of ground point of view.
Yeah,
great uses of like giving you a sense of like,
this is how big this is.
How, a sense of scale, but also like what does it look like from the layman's perspective.
And we've said it multiple times in this channel, Ultra just does it, and they do it so good. So
when you do it well, you do it well.
Yeah, like, oh, we're in a building. Oh, you can see the monster coming through the building.
Seeing the monster coming through the building from the windows. Stuff is rattling on the walls.
Tiptoe through the window. Through the building.
And tiptoe through the buildings with me.
And then everybody died.
The end. Close the book.
But yeah. I just love the innovation. I love seeing this 50 years.
I like things that look pretty.
In 50 years, we've seen so many things just evolve, and I love where they're going. I just hope, because King Ultra really hasn't been doing this much, especially in comparison to like Dawn Brothers and the ending of Zenkaiger. The CGI fights, they don't look as good, and you sort of saw this is in Dino Force Brave, that Ryu Soldier Korean one that we watched.
Oh yeah.
Where
God, I forgot that existed.
There's a reason.
We reviewed it and I forgot it.
It's just like the CGI in that didn't look great. And I understand it was just like a couple years after Ryu Soldier. But even coming to now,
I thought that was a Kyoryuger sequel.
It was. That's what I meant. All the Dino ones are blending together.
They're blending together.
If they're not
only one of them is good.
If they're not Alpha Rangers, they don't matter. Yeah, it's just one of those things. Speaking of Alpha Ranger, that 20YO will be out soon. We actually have another thing that we have to add to the schedule now because the 20th anniversary of Hurricane thing came out.
Oh yeah, I noticed.
Yeah,
I haven't had that.
We'll be watching that at some point. We'll probably be doing that with the Alpha Ranger one. They brought back Mai, like the actual actress, the little girl.
Oh, cool.
I'm like, huh, that's great. I like seeing that. But yeah, I got nothing else. Let us know what you think about cinematography. 50 years. We haven't seen Ultra, like the original Ultras, so we can't really speak to them. But we've seen everything 71 up for Kamen Rider. Everything for Super Sentai. Pretty much, we have a couple more in the 80s that we got to do, obviously. But let us know what you think about how cinematography has been done over these past several decades.
What's one of your shows that had your favorite cinematography?
Which one of your shows had the least? Don't forget to join us all the things. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Thank you for watching.